Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Yesterday, Tim Calhoun. Tim, it's great to have you on. I really appreciate you being here. And tell us, first of all, where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Powersport Pros.
Calling in from lovely Pismo Beach, California, about 2 miles from the seashore and lovely weather. And I now run my own consulting business and have for quite a few years, but have spent 40 years more or less in the power sports industry, which is everything motorcycle, personal watercraft, ATV, and UTV.
It's awesome. Yeah. So when did you start the consultancy? And can you tell us a little bit about your background, the different positions you had, different type of work you did working with power sports for the remainder of your career?
Yeah, I mean, well, went to school to be a school teacher, and that lasted not so long. Went to work in a bike shop one summer, the first summer, and a month later was running it. And 3 months later, went on the road in sales and did outside sales for about a decade. And then when Indian Gilroy opened up, a friend of mine was there, and they brought me on as the director of business development for Indian. So I opened the first 150 dealers across the country with that brand, and then had left and was hired by a small distributor at the time, Western Powersports, which later became one of the more dominant distributors in the industry, and helped build them over about 3 years from a $30 million distributor to a $369 million distributor, and added about 80 reps to their team. And from there was recruited away to run the U.S. division of an Italian exhaust company, a performance exhaust company called Leo Vinci, which was the largest in the world at the time, and launched that here in the U.S. and ran variations on that for about 13 years. So ran it, then bought it, and then created my own distribution company doing primarily race products. So we raced in everything from MotoGP all the way down to club racing in the U.S. So was involved with teams like Tech Trois, and at the time we had the Camel racing team, Valentino Rossi. It was the first year I was working for him. So was really blessed to have a career where I could see the racing at the highest level and work within those arenas. And then after that, just kind of became a hired guy to go in and fix companies. So I was a national sales manager for Helmet House, and was hired to come in there and build sales and help them sell that. And we did that over about a 2.5 year period. And then did a startup with a company called Quinn, which was a crash detection helmet, the first one of its kind really in the world. Could pinpoint your location, and got them set up, got the distribution set up, the sales team hired, the operations going. And then I had some friends at Heisen UTV, and the one chink I had in my armor I felt was I didn't know UTV very well. So I wanted to go to work there and just kind of immerse myself and figure UTV out. So went and worked there for about 8 months and built out a parts and accessory department, helped straighten that out, and did that. And then was recruited away here to Arroyo Grande, and it was a job that just didn't work out very well. So I decided I'd just go ahead and just become a full-time consultant. It's pretty much what I'd been doing for about 8 years anyways, as a hired gun, and just took off from day one, got some great clients, and it's been a really good move, and I feel really blessed to have had some great people to work with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so it sounds like most of your background, working for different power sport companies was more in the sales enablement, building sales teams and logistical kind of side. Do you kind of stay with those types of things as you're doing the consultancy now, or are you looking to kind of expand
really,
into more areas of the business?
More areas, having run my own company for 14 years, typically I'll go in, I'm very good at streamlining operations and really finding ways to clean up and simplify a lot of that. Warehousing, obviously, a lot about warehousing, having been in distribution on and off most of my career. So we'll help streamline operations, warehousing, software programs, CRMs, help build websites. And what I've been able to do is, even though I'm a small agency, I've got about 20 companies I work with that are part of or an extension of my agency on a contractual basis. So 3 marketing groups, several attorneys that specialize either in companies moving into country and how to get them here. I have attorneys that specialize in everything from forensic experts on crashes to you name it. And then I've got insurance brokers that handle about 150 companies. So if you need liability insurance, anything like that, I can help you out. I've done some dealership consulting. It's definitely not my forte, but I'm able to go in and really kind of identify where the hiccups are and positioning of people and clean up that operationally. More than anything, it's just really going in and getting operations lean and mean and eliminating waste and getting them to function cleanly and getting the right software packages into place that can handle a lot of things simply, and can interface with other programs. And then been doing a lot of B2C consulting, helping companies come to the market and go directly to consumers versus going to distributors the last 10 years. So again, just understanding where to enter markets or where to reposition brands in markets is a lot of what I do. And understanding the landscape of what's out there, having worked with so many companies and constantly being in contact with people throughout the community, you kind of know what's shifting, what's moving, who's doing well, who's doing badly, and where the opportunities are.
That's amazing. And I guess specifically for, say you go and work for a dealership, or the dealerships you've already worked with, what is some of the biggest sources of, like friction and kind of waste, as you mentioned, that you find in working with a lot of dealerships?
I think, the tough part is turnover rate within anybody's company. It doesn't matter if you're a restaurant or a dealership, it just has a high turnover rate, right? It's just like a revolving door. So it's really hard for a dealer to even want to invest a lot of money in training and a lot of money in getting people operating well. So typically when you walk into a dealership, you have an older parts manager or an older general manager who really knows how to run everything. And then the expertise drops off very quickly. And so the problem is you have, a couple guys working 50, 60 hours a week and they're burned out. And then you got a lot of guys that really aren't working very well at all because they haven't been trained. So you got to get them over the hump and let them know you got to continually train. You got to have clear communication. Generationally speaking, for some of my age, working with somebody in their 20s, it's not easy because it's a completely different mindset, completely different work ethic. And, I'm a guy that was trained to, grow up, work for a company, spend your life there. Right? Kids today are like average span at a company, 2.5 years, right? So you got to know that going in and you got to create value in the company for them to want to be there. Make it fun, make it easy, make them feel valued, train them, teach them, and hope you can retain them and do things to retain them. A lot of the other things are just a lot of times when I look at people's operating systems, their management systems, they aren't properly costing out items in the right categories. So it can look like sales department's crushing it, making tons of money, and parts department's not making a dime. Well, every time the sales department gives something away, they're billing it out to parts. So it looks, all the margin you had in the parts department is going away because the sales department's using it up. So getting those boundaries set so you really see where you're making your money, where you're losing your money, understanding, can your service writer, is he really maximizing the jobs that are coming in the door? Are they selling off the racks when the bike's up on a rack and making you more money? Does your sales staff properly know how to sell a helmet, how to sell gear, how to sell accessories? Are they saying the right things when a consumer walks in the door? Are they saying anything when a consumer, or they stand there with an iPhone in their hand? So all those little things are just, you kind of stand back for a day or two, walk around and see what you have to work with. Then you dive into it and really start finding out what's working, what's not within the dealership. And, it changes, it varies, but there's a lot of things that are very similar in a lot of dealerships.
Right. And then how long will you typically work with a dealership? I mean, obviously it depends. I mean, if things are really bad, obviously you stick around a little bit longer. Maybe it's just like a small change that needs to be made, maybe not as long. But what's kind of the typical life cycle for you? You work with a client, bring in, kind of fix some of those things like you mentioned. How long does that relationship typically last? I'm just curious.
I think if you do it correctly, that relationship never really ends, quite frankly. They'll pull you back in again and again with questions, which is really nice. And that's the way I try to work, is for the long dollar. I'm not brutally expensive. I try to make it affordable and intelligent and give myself value with them. And then you're going to make your money in the long run. An initial visit, 1 to 2 days to really go through a dealership and look at what's happening. If it's a large dealership, it could easily be another 2 days, depending on how much they want you to dive in to the CRM and operations and to waste and all that stuff. But usually you're looking at 3-4 days out of the gate to really lay out what's going on and maybe what they should do, and then create an action plan and seeing what they actually want to implement and make changes on.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I guess in a more general sense as well, in the world of power sports overall, are you seeing kind of a general, acceleration of interest and things like that, or a general deceleration? I just feel like, I'm not really big into this space, so I don't really have a personal gauge or like a pulse check on, things like this. So, as things moving like increasingly digital, we're all like, most of the entertainment is just gone digital. A lot of younger kids, all they want to do is game, right? Have you kind of noticed that as like a general trend of like maybe just some deceleration in this industry in general, or not necessarily?
No, not since COVID. I mean, we tripled our audience during COVID, which was a welcome surprise. But more importantly, there's a real movement in the e-moto world. And what e-moto is like a small form electric dirt bike. You probably see them. Where do you live?
Upstate New York in Poughkeepsie. Yeah.
Well, even there, you're going to see some of these e-bikes and e-motos on the street. Right.
Yep.
And small form dirt bike. Right now there's about 200,000 of those units a year going to the market, primarily like 13 to like 18-year olds. And it's really interesting because I wouldn't say it to their face, but growing up in the mid 70s riding dirt bikes, we did the same thing. We were hooligans. We'd go bomb dirt fields and everything else. And it's the same thing. And what's interesting is when I see these kids, and we did an open house 2 weeks ago and introduced a new bike, and had like 100 kids there. The only reason they're holding their phone is to take a snapshot and post it on Instagram. Other than that, they're not sitting there doing this or playing games. They're
Right.
riding that bike, and that visceral, that wind in the face, that having a throttle in their hand, and that living it, is something that's kind of a wake up call for kids that hasn't happened in a long time. And it's really exciting for me to see, because what I see it does for these kids, the confidence they have. I mean, I got, 13, 14-year-olds standing there talking to me as an adult. And 5 years ago, these kids would have their eyes down and wouldn't say much, and they want to just go hide in the corner and play on their phone. No, these kids are telling you about their ride, and they're telling you about what they want to buy, and they're telling you about their bike. And they're so engaged in it, and they're so confident. And I just urge parents, man, if you can see the confidence that being a rider gives to these kids, like, just makes them feel good about everything and feel bold and not afraid to talk to people, and they know it, and they're smart about these bikes, and they learn everything about them. And it's really refreshing for me to see, because for many years we're going, where are we going to get the young riders? Then all of a sudden we're seeing like 200,000 riders a year jump on these bikes, and there's an audience there now, and these kids are rabid about it and they love it. And these kids are going out in every backyard and every trail they can find. They're digging and building their own tracks with shovels, and I mean, God bless them. It's amazing to see. And I think the good thing is, with the e-moto side of it, is unlike when I was a kid, we had some pretty gnarly, smoky, loud, and smelly two-strokes out there. So I'm sure neighbors weren't exactly thrilled with this. Most people don't even know these kids are out there riding. You can't hear them, you barely see them, and they're not hurting anybody. They're just having a great time with each other, and they ride in groups. It's 5, 6, 8 kids at a time. So I'm really excited to see it. In that, I think makes kids more responsible. It makes kids smarter. It makes kids more confident. I really like what I see going on right now, and I'm very hopeful for our industry.
No, that's amazing. I love that. And I mean, I don't know whether to be surprised or not. Obviously, so many things going digital. I just didn't know what to think. This is why I asked. But I'm really glad to hear that, because, as I mentioned, I was never really super big into, sports when I was growing up. But I did have an awesome experience. One of my family members that lives out in Vegas took me out to Dumont for a weekend, and we were riding around the dunes on his ATVs and his sand rail. And man, that was like a life changer for me. That adrenaline, and I've been hooked on
Yeah.
it ever since. I've always been big into kind of like snowboarding and kind of like real like adrenaline junkie type of sports like that. But I just never had the, I don't know. I don't know why. I just, like, after that, all I ever wanted to do was get another ATV and go do it again. But I just hadn't really done it since then. But I really love to hear that, because I do know that exact experience that you're talking about. So that's for sure. That's amazing. And
No, I just think action sports are action sports. And whether you're a snowboarder, I think a snowboarder who gets on an e-moto, it's the same feeling, right? It's that
yep.
adrenaline rush, it's that excitement. And I think that's a good part between skateboarding, biking, everything else. Action sports is action sports, and it's become so much easier and so much more attainable than it ever has been, and affordable. I mean, these e-bikes, 3 or 4 grand, they're not unattainable.
hmm
So that's the exciting part. But go ahead with your question you had. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm really happy to hear that. I really am. And yeah, there's just one question I always love to ask everybody that comes on the podcast. Obviously, you started the consultancy. Most recently is kind of your most recent venture. Everything, learning everything you kind of knew now, even though I know you were kind of like a gun for hire, working for companies for a while before you did the actual consultancy. Because if you can go back and maybe change anything or give yourself any piece of advice if you were going to start the consultancy again, what do you think that piece of advice would be to yourself?
I don't know so much the consultancy. I'd go back probably further to when I owned my own company. And I think, being a consultant and having had, 12 or 13 great years and a couple of really bad years, you learn a lot very quickly, especially when you walk away. And I think, the hard lessons learned for me was, I've always tried to scale, get bigger, 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 bigger. And I think you're better off just picking a few things or even one thing and just be the best at it, right? Really specialize, really be the go-to, and really be the person who's respected, and people understands that product, or you're great in that category. That's probably the first one, is just be good at what you're good at, right? Secondarily, I think it would be that, understand, if you don't have a good financial background, find somebody that does to work with. That's probably the most important thing in business. It's just very easy to think you can manage it, and then one day you wake up and realize you didn't do that very well. And it happens again and again. I mean, you have some really smart people in business, but the best people I find in business are people who typically have some kind of financial background and truly understand the nuts and bolts of it. And that's something I don't pretend. I bring in experts with me to do that and do forensics on dealers. But it's taught me a lot about, you don't just hang and hope. You really really have to understand your numbers and dollars. And had I been better at that earlier in my career, I would have probably eliminated half my product lines. Just they were not that profitable. You think it presents this bigger picture, but in reality, it was more burdensome than it was helpful. And the last thing was, I think, really, I don't advise anybody to start businesses today that don't have some type of B2C component, direct to consumer component. Traditionally, we've relied upon dealers to carry the weight in our industry, but years ago, dealers stopped stocking less and relied upon distributors to deliver it in a very timely manner. So if somebody comes and buys it, they got to come back in 2 days to get it. I can ship to that consumer the same as you can, right? And I hate to be mean, but if you're not going to stock in your dealership, then honestly, you've lost value to me because I need you to have it on the floor to sell when they walk in the door. And so for me, I always advise most companies to set up both a B2B and B2C option. And while dealers may not like it, the reality is most companies are going to struggle to survive if they don't have that longer dollar from consumer. Plus, there are just consumers who now are used to buying direct from manufacturers, and that's exactly what they want to do. It just, they have more trust in the manufacturer. They feel like if they have a problem, it's going to be taken care of better, no middleman. So you got to really look at that going into business now. But anything you can do more or less direct to consumer or as a manufacturer to consumer, you'll probably find some level of success because there's enough points to find success.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. And there's also, I definitely find a lot of commonality in answers I get to that question across industries, which is exactly what you just said, which is so often, especially at a lot of CPG brands that I talk to, it's the exact same thing. They say, like, I wish I didn't stretch myself so thin with so many SKUs. I wish I just stuck to, like, the original or best selling product. So I definitely find that as, like, anecdotal evidence. If you hear it 35 times, it's not so anecdotal anymore. So I think if anybody's listening or looking to get into a capital venture, maybe for the first time, if you take away nothing else, if you're listening, that's definitely one. Believe me, if you listen to any one of my other podcasts, you'll probably hear something to that effect, no matter what the industry was. So I think that's all really good advice. And yeah, and I think in doing that, I think gets to your second point as well. And, like, just keeping it simple with the best performing SKUs and just being an expert in one thing, I think can really help you with your logistics too, because then you don't have to worry about the fulfillment for 20 things. You worry about the fulfillment for one thing. You can really optimize that to make that customer experience that much better as well. So I think all of things kind of go hand in hand. And again, just that's really good advice. So I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, just want to give you an opportunity as well, Tim, for anybody listening, maybe might be interested in, potentially partnering with you or just, chatting with you or learning more about your consulting business. What's the best way for people to stay in touch with you?
Our website is www.powersports.pros.com. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, and it's got my full contacts in there as well. I work as a consultant. I also am a fractional national sales manager, a fractional VP of sales, and a fractional president. So
Awesome.
if you're looking for some leadership in your companies, I do a lot of that. I work with about 70 salesmen across the country to represent several brands. So that's what kind of keeps me having fun, is being out there moving those brands. And then the rest is just trying to share some experience and help companies be successful.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you, Tim. I just want to say thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck and continued success. I really look forward to staying in touch as well.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you as well. Thanks, everybody.